California closes up as new lockdowns take effect this morning. Big banks move to Florida and predictions for the week ahead. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, December 7th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Hey, Jill. How was the weekend?
Very, very chill. Did not do a thing. How was your weekend?
Yeah, same thing. I think I pretty much successfully avoided getting the coronavirus, I think. So it was a good weekend in that sense. I am working, by the way, on our Need2Know Spotify playlist. So keep an eye out for that in the next day or two. I should have it figured out. And
Wait, why
I'll
are you not
it.
asking me for picks?
Oh, should I? I was just going to do all the picks that everybody put on it. Everybody wrote in.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I thought we were doing so that would be workout songs. So that would be like the Need2Know workout playlist.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should also do a playlist for just background noise. So let's do a Need2Know workout playlist, which I think for sure with everybody's take. And then I think let's do kind of like a Need2Know your background work from home cooking type of playlist.
I can do that.
And everybody out there sends us your picks too, because we want to include them.
Okay.
I feel like I lost all musical credibility when my number one stream song, according to Spotify this year, was Jenny from the Block. So like no one is asking me for any musical suggestions.
Oh my God,
I'm
you should not have said that. I don't know, Jill. That's bad.
In fairness, it's because my daughter would go crazy every time we would play it, and so we just would replay it and replay it and replay it. But I stand by it. It's a great song.
It's a good song.
And it always puts me in a good mood. All right, let's get to some news because, as usual, there's a lot of it. About 33 million Californians, about 85% of the state's population, under a new stay-at-home order, more likely to follow in the coming days. Residents in Southern California are subjected to increased restrictions, which includes a ban on on-site dining, non-essential travel, and most inter-household gatherings. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani is at Georgetown Medical Center after he tested positive for COVID over the weekend. This is according to a tweet from the president. Giuliani tweeted that he's getting great care and recovering. And he, of course, has been traveling the country to attend these election hearings where he has not been wearing a mask. Dr. Scott Gottlieb predicting we're going to hit 300,000 deaths by the end of the year and 400,000 by the end of January. Just think about that.
Yeah, I mean, 100,000 deaths in the month of January. Let's hope that he's off there. That's really almost hard to imagine. Yeah, it's not just Southern California. It's also the San Joaquin Valley, parts of the Bay Area also going under lockdown in the coming days. Back to Giuliani for a second. And first of all, I mean, I wish him well in his recovery. Obviously, we both do. But you have to wonder if this is just a way for them to sort of get him off television. I mean, he has been making just an absolute embarrassment of himself these last few weeks. I don't think anyone has had a more insane fall autumn than Rudy Giuliani. Him getting caught on Borat was literally the least ridiculous thing he's done in like the last 6 or 8 weeks. Also, Jill, President-elect Biden, he has reportedly kicked Javier.
Before we switch gears, the only thing I want to say about Giuliani is because I know you were saying, if it's a way to get him off TV, I don't even want to joke about it because what's so offensive to me is that this is just yet another member of Trump's inner circle that's just getting preferential, did not take COVID seriously and gets preferential treatment. Nobody else, short of the president and Chris Christie and Ben Carson, can go to a hospital the day after they get diagnosed with coronavirus. It's just, that's not how it works. These hospitals, the reason places are shutting down is because hospitals are literally running out of space.
No, it's a really good point.
People are getting sicker, right? Like you can't be admitted to a hospital. People at this point, it is documented that they're sending people home where 2 months ago, you would have been admitted because they just don't have the space to properly take care of you. And if you're at the hospital, you get better care. Every one of them. Chris Christie, he had access to that Eli Lilly treatment that was experimental. I don't know anyone who could get their hands on it now
Oh,
because
of
there's so
course.
many cases. Trump, of course, had the experimental Regeneron treatment. I'm not familiar with Ben Carson's course of treatment, but I know that he was in the hospital very soon after diagnosis. So it's, again, they like don't take it seriously. They don't wear
And then they just
masks,
waltz
and
in.
yet
Then they
their
just waltz into
care
the
is,
hospital. Yeah.
then they, yeah, walk into the hospital before they get really sick. I'm sure get every treatment that's available, and then come
Oh,
out and say, hey, it's not a big deal. In fairness to
I'm
Chris
sure
Christie, at
you're right.
least he said it was a big deal. But that's
Yeah.
what's
No,
it's so frustrating.
I'm glad you said that, and I'm sure that Giuliani's being pumped full of the antibodies right now, and he'll walk out today or tomorrow saying he's feeling great, and this is an amazing treatment, and everyone should get it, even though nobody can. I'm glad you made that point. Now I'm going to get all heated again. But before I do that, I did want to mention this story that's breaking this morning. President-elect Biden has reportedly picked Javier Becerra, who is the California Attorney General, to run the Department of Health and Human Services. That's a little bit of a surprise. The smart money had Becerra going to the Department of Justice. So it's a little interesting there. If confirmed, Becerra will effectively be in charge of the pandemic response come January 20th. Just briefly on California, the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, he said this weekend that COVID is, quote, the greatest threat to life in Los Angeles that we have ever faced, which may be, it probably is true. But I just wonder if he was thinking that when he gave the go-ahead last week for that city to shut down its testing facility at Union Station, one of the only testing facilities in the city that was available by public transit. And he did that in order to accommodate the film shoot for the gender-swapped She's All That remake. California, we
What?
yeah, you didn't hear this?
I didn't know
Unbelievable.
that. No.
Uh, we talk about New York, Florida as these big states that have had some bad political leadership this year. California really may take the cake. Their Democratic leaders have just been in an absolute embarrassment. Between Garcetti literally closing one of the big testing sites for a movie shoot, the governor, Gavin Newsom, and the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, breaking their own COVID protocols to dine out at Michelin-starred restaurants, this has truly been a banner year for hypocritical politicians. And we wonder why some people don't take them seriously when they call for new restrictions.
And that's the problem, right? I mean, if it was just a matter of political corruption or hypocrisy, you could almost just say, okay, politics as usual. But the problem is it's creating such a confusing message that it's costing lives. I actually heard an interview with a restaurant owner who she had to shut down in California. She was like, I've been in business 10 years. I finally had just paid off my last mortgage payment or whatever payment that it was. I felt like I was such a success. I built my life around this. My restaurant is shut down, and yet a film crew is shooting on the sidewalk in front of my restaurant. Needless to say, she was infuriated. And to your point, that's the problem. There's this like haphazard
Yeah.
and there's all these rules are so arbitrary as to what's open and what's not, and it's different in every state, it's different in every municipality, and people don't trust it. Look, you can eat indoors in New York State right now, but you can't have indoor gatherings with 10 people that you know. So what about those 10 people who are in a restaurant? And I know that you're
Right.
spread out and you're 6 feet apart, but you're still not wearing a mask, and those are just totally random people. In school, if a kid gets COVID, at least in New York, their sibling doesn't have to quarantine. So their sibling can still go to school.
I didn't know that.
If a teacher gets it, right? If a teacher gets it, you don't have to inform the whole class. The whole thing's just crazy. Why not
Yeah.
err on the side of caution, right? Like, why not make the rules the other way, stricter, right? We're all nervous about this. It's not that much longer. Let's just all
Right.
let's tighten up and make it. I don't know. This is my
No, no,
this is my
no, you're
frustration.
right. No, I think you're right. I think it's all about the capriciousness and how arbitrary everything is what's really, I think, grating on people at this stage in the game. This is not new. Today's December 7th? We've been doing this dance now for 9 months, folks. Like,
I mean, can you imagine having a kid in a class, the teacher gets COVID, and no one tells you. You don't have to know.
yeah, I assume that's a
Like,
teacher
wouldn't you
union thing.
want to
I don't
know
know.
so you could
Right.
test your kid?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um, On to the latest in the vaccine race. The FDA could approve a coronavirus vaccine for use in the U.S. as soon as this week. The government has an ambitious plan to scale up the rollout, even as questions continue over the logistics of the first shipments. The White House vaccines are saying there will be a, quote, significant decrease in deaths among the elderly by the end of January, when the first round of shots will have been delivered to at least 20 million people. That is, of course, if the stars align here and everything works out with distribution. But that is not far away, Carlo.
No, but the stars really do have to align for them to hit these goals that they've been laying out. These plans are insanely ambitious. The head of Operation Warp Speed said last week, and I know that we talked about this, I think, on Friday, that they expect 100 million people to be vaccinated by the end of February. I kept thinking about that after we talked about it, I think, on Friday. That's nearly a third of the country vaccinated in the next 90 days. I mean, look, I don't mean to be cynical, and I hope to God that I am wrong about this. I will happily take the L. But has anything this year gone as well as the government is saying this is going to go? Anything that has been run by the federal government, at least? I mean, I really, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this is just unbelievably successful. But you gotta wonder, right?
No, in fact, everything has gone so much worse. Not even just from like
Right.
every response, any expert on this and any expert on a pandemic will say that in their wildest dreams, they couldn't have imagined how bad things would go
Yeah.
here in the US anyway. Switching
That's not to
gears,
say, by
this
the
is
way,
a
but
make.
very briefly, that's not to say that I don't trust these vaccines. I want to be very clear about that. I would get this vaccine tomorrow if it was available. The medical advancements are absolutely unbelievable. It's the logistics of the rollout that makes me a little bit nervous.
I put something on Instagram that I thought was really funny. It was like, it was not my own original thing, and I wish I could think of who it was. It was like, if you drank jungle juice, I don't know, Carl, if you know what jungle juice is.
Of
If you
course I do.
drank jungle juice in a house off campus, in an asbestos ridden basement, and you drank it out of some Tupperware bin, don't worry about what's in the COVID vaccine. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Right,
And I
exactly.
was
It's
just
probably
like, you
already.
know what? Fair point. Switching gears, this is a make or break week in Congress where a deadline to fund the government coming on Friday and momentum for a new stimulus bill is growing. Last Friday's extremely weak jobs report and the worsening pandemic is adding some new urgency for lawmakers to agree on a new stimulus package before the lame duck session expires. They also face a potential veto from President Trump over the annual defense bill, which is not typically a hard thing to get passed. The president has said he's not going to sign the $240 billion bill if it includes a provision to strip the names of Confederate leaders from military bases, which it currently does.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, Jill, talking Congress, the Washington Post this weekend called all 249 GOP members of Congress to ask them who won the election. Just 27 of them acknowledged that Joe Biden is the president-elect. Two actually said that Trump won. You know, enough states certified their votes just last week to give Biden 270 electoral votes, and 88% of elected Republicans won't acknowledge that. I'm so sick of talking about this, but it's one thing for the president and his people to be doing what they're doing, which is essentially running like a massive fundraising grift that takes advantage of their voters. But for sitting elected officials to deny reality like this going on more than a month, it is truly one of the dumbest things that I have witnessed in my career of covering the news. I don't even. I mean, and again, for them to be doing this now, when this transition is so important that we not mess it up, given what's riding on it, it's just it's mind-boggling.
The question is, Carlo, do they think their own results are accurate? Right? So many of these senators and congressmen were up for reelection themselves, like Lindsey Graham, right? He thinks there's election fraud. He's one of the biggest shouters of it. But he won, right? Polls showed he was going to lose, and he won. So was
Right.
that election fine? I mean, those ballots
Yeah. Yeah.
weren't tampered with, right? I mean, that's sort of where the hypocrisy comes in. It's like either you think the whole thing was a sham and that there was this massive widespread fraud, and one of the
Right.
best points that I heard, not that the burden of proof was ever on the Biden people or the Democrats to prove this. It's if you have an accusation, you need to prove it.
Right.
But if the Democrats, or if I don't know if there was this huge conspiracy, why would you just change the name at the top of the ticket and yet not have Democrats pick up seats in the House and potentially lose the Senate? And what they're going to, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, right.
as of right now, they lost the Senate but of course, there's still those runoff elections.
That's all you need to say. Yeah, I mean, you didn't right. You fixed the election, but you didn't give yourself Senate control. That's kind of dumb.
All right, really quickly before we get to the rest of the news, if you're looking for your next listen, you should tune into An Animal Saved My Life. It's a podcast from The Dodo and iHeartRadio. The hosts, Renee Colbert and Alexis Preston, they listen and share unbelievable stories from people all over the world who've had their lives saved by an animal. From a dog pulling his owner off train tracks to a dog whose untrained nose actually detected her mom's cancer sooner than a machine can. The podcast tells a variety of true stories that remind us why we are so lucky to have animals in our lives.
I like that. We could use some of that right now, right?
Yeah, nice distraction from the rest of what's going on. But now back to, of course, the news. Goldman Sachs, one of the largest and most influential investment banks in the world, is said to be considering moving one of its most profitable divisions to Florida from New York City. Goldman is specifically looking at Palm Beach or Fort Lauderdale for its asset management arm after apparently coming to the conclusion that remote work has made it more feasible to move employees and offices from expensive high-tax states like New York. Other Wall Street funds like Elliott, Citadel, and Blackstone also have been moving operations to Florida.
Yeah, but the
Wow.
reason why this is potentially big is it's Goldman, right? If a huge bank like Goldman Sachs actually does this, those results would be a really big blow to Manhattan's status, not just as the financial capital of the world, but just for its tax base. Uh, you know, um, corporations in New York City have the upper hand right now because they've proven over the last few months that they can go all remote if they want to, and it doesn't really seem like any of our politicians has have realized this. But this is also a good excuse for me to mention some of the feedback that we got on our discussion of the potential 4-day work week last week. We got some really good feedback. Daniela wrote in. And she said what I think was a really good point, which is instead of making the work week like 4 days, the key is to just make it flexible, right? The work in the post-COVID world just needs to be more flexible, whether that means 4 days or 10-hour days or however it's going to work for you to make sure you get your work done and also have some work-life balance. One of our listeners, Raul, reminded us that the 5-day 40-hour work week was actually invented by Henry Ford to give workers more time off because it used to be 48 hours, which I didn't know that actually. But yeah, I think the bottom line here is if this pandemic teaches us anything, it's that the world has changed and people need and deserve, I think, more flexibility in work where they can get it. And technology has made that possible. So let's use that for our benefit.
All right, Carlo, did you catch SNL this weekend?
I
Jason
did
Bateman was the
actually.
host. Morgan Wallen performed after the show, if you remember, canceled his performance earlier in the season because he broke COVID protocols. I thought it was a pretty good episode. Wallen did a fun kind of like spoof on himself in a bar. I thought it was a
Yeah.
nice way to handle it. I think the highlight for me was the Pete Davidson short where he parodied Eminem's
Yeah,
song
that's good.
Stan from 2000. It had this Christmas theme. It was basically Davidson was obsessed with Santa and was writing him letters asking for a PlayStation 5. Eminem makes a cameo at the end. I was like crying from
Yeah, it's
laughter.
pretty good.
I just thought it was so well done. So anyone who didn't see
It,
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 who's from kind of like our era, I
totally.
recommend Googling it.
Well, especially I linked to it in the newsletter today, but also because you're pretty big on songs from like the 2000 2001 era. So
Clearly.
there's right up your alley. I did enjoy. My favorite skit was the one where the moms reacted to their adult children telling them that they weren't going to be home for Christmas. Did you see that? Kate McKinnon telling her daughter like, "If you don't love me, Marie, just say so. I didn't raise a coward." They just absolutely. I thought that was so funny. They nailed it. That sense of like talking to your parents who aren't taking it that seriously, and you're like, "What am I doing here?" Right?
No, I thought it was just really well done. All right, let's do some predictions for the week. Last week, I said I thought New York Mayor de Blasio was once again going to change the policy on schools, just as kids and parents were going to get so excited to go back to in person learning. But no, public elementary schools are reopening in New York City today, so I was wrong. This week, we decided that we're going to try to predict Time Person of the Year because that's going to come out on Thursday. So Carlo and I are both going to have predictions around that. I am predicting Dr. Fauci I think it's a pretty obvious choice, and I don't even want to list all of the obvious reasons. But the reason that he stood out for me compared to some of the other nominees was because he's somebody who this time last year most people hadn't heard of, right? And now
Yeah.
he's absolutely driving the conversation. A lot of the other nominees, Trump, Biden, uh, AOC, even, it could have been any year. I think my runner up for this would be Kamala Harris, who is breaking
Yeah.
ground as the first VP of color, the first woman, the first South Asian. So she'd be my runner up, but I'm going with Fauci.
I think that's a good prediction. So last week, I predicted there was going to be some type of escalation with Iran. I'm giving myself half a point here as the referee in charge, based on reporting in the New York Times the other day that Iran is upping its uranium enrichment, and they're going to expel weapons inspectors in February if the sanctions aren't lifted. I think I deserve half a point for that. This is going to be, by the way, in all seriousness, a major probably the first foreign policy test of the Biden administration. We really got to stay on this because it has the potential to really go sideways, I think. But this week for Time Person of the Year, I think Fauci's a good choice. I think you're right. It has to be somebody. It has to be something related to the pandemic. It just has to be. So my predictions are doctors Ugur Sahin and Aslam Tarichi. This is the couple we've talked about before who founded the German biotech company called BioNTech. And they are largely given credit for inventing the technology behind these mRNA vaccines. The only thing working against them, I think, is maybe it's too early. Maybe they should get it next year once this is over and people have been vaccinated. But I think they get it. That's my guess. So the current score going into this week, Jill, you have 3. I have 2.5. So I am coming up on you.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm gonna have to do next week as soon as we have our Need to Know workout playlist, which doesn't have to be a workout playlist, it's just like a hype playlist. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put that on and I'm gonna come up with my prediction. And I think maybe I'll do
Okay.
better.
Fair
All right,
enough.
everyone, that's what you need to know for Monday, December 7th.
Bye, guys.